Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic.
In the next several days to a week or so, we're going to continue to see things go up. We cannot be discouraged by that because the mitigation is actually working.
The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals. I'm moving forward with vaccination requirements wherever I can.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Otto, and welcome to episode 8 of COVID Secrets. It's scary to think that the very organizations and establishments that were created to protect the rights of the people have been the ones to exploit them for personal profit and gain. At what point are hundreds of thousands of lives less important than money? This is where we are now, this huge agenda that the global government has carried out called the COVID-19 pandemic. There's no justifying their actions to coerce the public into believing that the mandates were necessary, effective, and for our own protection, when this couldn't be further from the truth. They've threatened people with loss of jobs and restrictions from going to public places because they refuse to get the harmful vaccine. They've withheld important information that allows people to learn about the real risks associated with the vaccine, and they've continued to push this agenda despite the serious harm it's causing. People who have fought back have received backlash from the government and other authorities. They've been threatened, and some have even been directly affected by standing up against these evils. For example, doctors losing their medical licenses for giving their patients the right medicines. People losing their jobs for standing up against the vaccine mandates, and the list goes on and on. The truth is, they won't stop here, and their larger agenda is unfathomable. The only way we can stand against the tyranny is to educate ourselves in the truth and stand together to fight for our rights. This may come with sacrifice and struggle, but it's imperative that we do this for the well-being and freedom of future generations. During this episode, our speakers will talk about how they're standing up to the global tyranny by standing together, being brave and courageous. Our first expert is Lee Dundas, a human rights attorney and abolitionist dedicated to preserving basic freedoms while also combating global injustices like child slavery and the peddling of medical tyranny disguised as progress. She talks about how people have had to question their doctors because it's clear that many have abandoned their ethics to carry out the government's atrocities. There is no such thing as informed consent anymore, and people are being mandated to get the vaccines for which they have no idea about the ingredients that are being used in them. Following Lee Dundas is Mary Holland, a prolific attorney who speaks out against the unlawful mandates, and she adds to Lee Dundas's point that no one is actually getting informed consent for something that is being mandated, and that's just entirely unethical. You come from a perspective of someone that advocates for human rights and for legal procedures, for example, informed consent.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm forced to do, to try to give the public informed consent because the doctor isn't doing it.
So ironic that lay people are trying to give informed consent to other lay people because the doctors have completely abandoned their ethical duty.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
So, and perhaps you can, this concept of informed consent based off data, for example, VAERS being, which is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, being set up so that a doctor can give their patient true informed consent, which should happen with any medical procedure.
Should.
And generally, it's a principle for life. Like,
yeah.
We should always know risk versus benefit for anything.
Exactly.
And so, what do you have to say on that subject area? Has the public been given informed consent? Are the public aware of how potentially dangerous this vaccine is, even from a very conventional perspective?
No, they've not. Hell no, with a capital H and a capital N. If you look back in history, again, the worst prior to now, the worst blemish on our record, or one of them anyway, was the Holocaust. And what did we see at the end of the Holocaust? We saw the Nuremberg trials, and we held accountable those who, in the main, medically experimented on vulnerable populations who were not able to fight back or to know what they were being injected with in many cases. Joseph Mengele was known as the Angel of Death. He was an SS member. He was assigned to Auschwitz, and he would look for twins. He would look for children. He would go out with candy. Many of those who were chosen to select children to experiment on and then kill them didn't like their job. He would go out with a smile. He would go out with a smile hunting for children, twins to go experiment on. And this was an angel of death. He was a medical doctor. And at the end of the war, we put people like him on trial, and then we put them to death. And then we adopted the Nuremberg Code.
Except for those that got off on Operation Paperclip.
And went to live in Argentina and came to Operation Paperclip to fund the research that America was doing to catch up on all things war and the like. Yes.
Which would have led us to this moment.
Which had a huge hand in leading us to this moment. And if people aren't familiar with Operation Paperclip or Operation Mockingbird or Operation MK Naomi, they should absolutely go check those out. But yeah, horrifying how that went. But the Nuremberg Code was one of the better things that came out of that mid-1940s era. And it says you can't experiment medically on people without their true informed consent. And the very next sentence, I'm not doing it justice, I'm summarizing, but the very next sentence says, by the way, it's not informed consent if there's duress, if there's coercion, if there's bribery. And we have seen nothing but that in the last year and a half with reference to this vaccine. Oh, we're going to give you a donut. Oh, we're going to give you a new car. We're going to give you $100 at your job if you do it. We're going to give you a promotion. And when the bribery stopped working, then it was, oh, okay, well, we're going to hold you against a barrel and a gun to your head, and you're going to lose your job or your privileges or your ability to hang out at the fraternity or go to football games without testing, or, you know, you can't go on campus, but you can because you had the vaccine. I mean, nothing more and nothing less than straight up duress and coercion. And they've been doing that over and over and over again, and that vitiates informed consent. And we knew it as far back as the mid-1940s on the heels of the Angel of Death, and yet we seem to have forgotten it, or maybe people aren't students of history.
Hi, it's Jonathan Otto here, and I'm with Mary Holland, a prolific attorney that works and is the president of the Children's Health Defense. And she's done some fascinating work over the years in various arenas, and so she's the right person to have here speaking on the issues that are going on now at a legal level. And so thank you so much, Mary, for taking the time with me today. I've been really looking forward to interviewing you for months now, so I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan.
Awesome. Mary, if you could take me through your background, so your credentials for the audience, and some of the things that you've been up to in the past that have been of impact.
Sure. So, quick biography or autobiography. I come from a hyper medicalized family. I actually lived in the Soviet Union as a teenager. Got very interested in issues around human rights. Had a child. The child was vaccine injured in the 1990s. And I'm a lawyer by profession, and that really took me down the rabbit hole, as they say, of not only trying to recover my son, who's substantially recovered, but also trying to understand how all of this could be happening legally. And sort of the COVID world has really put the whole vaccine paradigm, the legal vaccine paradigm, on steroids. And so I'm very happy to be at Children's Health Defense and able to devote my full attention to these legal and advocacy and educational issues around vaccines and environmental exposures for children's health and really adult health at this point as well.
Wow, thank you so much. And so when it comes to these vaccines and the mandates that are going on now, and even mandates in the past that are still in existence, for example, the mandates for children to have vaccinations to attend school and things like this, now we're seeing this mandatory nature. People try to argue that it's not mandatory, but when it threatens your pay structure and your ability to feed your family, I find it hard to think how anyone could possibly consider that that's not mandatory in essence. Is this a breach to the Constitution of the United States of America? Does the Constitution inherently provide for protections against and then allow for this freedom, even in regard to something termed as religious freedom? What would you say to this?
Well, I do believe that the mandates are unlawful, and I do believe that ultimately they will be held unconstitutional in the United States, and that medical mandates, all medical mandates, will be held to be violations of international human rights norms. We're not quite there yet, but we're fighting that battle every day. Since Nuremberg, it's very clear that you have to have prior free and informed consent for individuals to any medical intervention. And we don't have, and what's so troubling about the COVID paradigm is this idea that it's voluntary, the idea that because it's not technically universally mandated yet in the United States and in most countries, that somehow it's been voluntary. And as you point out, when it's coerced, and it has been coerced, people lose their jobs, they lose their education, they lose their pension benefits, they lose their health benefits. It's obviously coerced, and yet this is somehow passing for the moment as being voluntary. We have at Children's Health Defense many lawsuits opposing mandates of the tests, of the masks, of the vaccines, in a variety of contexts, in an educational context, in an employment context, indirectly in the military context. So, we just think that you can't have the Hippocratic Oath and first do no harm and serve individual patients at the same time that you're fulfilling government mandates of a one-size-fits-all medical intervention that can kill people. There's just no question about that. So I believe that all medical mandates will fall. But this is, in some respects, Jonathan, the fight of our lives. If this survives, literally, we do become slaves. We really don't have control over our own bodies. Our right to life is absolutely threatened. What kind of privacy can you talk about? What kind of parental rights can you talk about? What kind of bodily autonomy can you talk about? And ultimately, what kind of property rights can you talk about if you don't control your own body and your own bloodstream, which is really what is at issue today?
So far, we've heard from some very powerful women as they advocate against the tyranny that people are facing today. Next up is another female heroine, Senator Kim Thatcher, as she discusses how the entire response to the pandemic has been nothing more than a mode of oppression. She reiterates that the mandates imposed, apart from being unnecessary, also cause damage to people's lives. We'll then go back to Lee Dundas as she shares a shocking story proving that people haven't been given informed consent, even when they've explicitly asked for it. We'll also hear from Joshua Yoder, a former flight medic in the military who works as a pilot for a major US airline. He foresaw the tyranny of the federal government and the destruction of human lives with the coercion and the mandates which led to the founding of the US Freedom Flyers. The freedom movement connected the transportation sector and the resolve to fight government overreach. He enumerates the potential adverse reactions that pilots can get from the vaccine, like blood clots, strokes, and death, and mentions the danger it poses to the flight and its passengers as a whole. Hey, it's Jonathan here, and I've got a really special announcement. This is something I mentioned in the previous episode, that we'd be releasing some new gifts for you, available only for those that are taking advantage of this offer between now, the time of this video, and before we close episode 9, the following episode. So it's just a limited window here, and anyone that has already purchased our program over the past week or two, you all have access to this. So this is a gift that is given to you as already, so don't worry about that. So the program that we're sharing here is nothing short of amazing. We've added in 3 new gifts. Now, you can check them out here on the page, but I want you to know about them. They're very important. So collectively, the programs are valued at $1,591, but we're giving these all as free gifts. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I've been sharing with you that I believe that your health is very important, and that I want to be there for you to support you with your health, and that COVID is a window into understanding how we need to be ready for these types of things, and we need to strengthen our bodies and our immune systems and all of these things. And so the reason why I've done this for you is that I want to help you, and I want you to be able to get the results that you need and that you deserve. So with this, you'll be able to use these tools for 3 specific areas. Firstly is the answer to autoimmune disease. Now, this is a 12-module course. It's a masterclass series that goes into detail of the root cause of autoimmune disease and how you can reverse it through diet, lifestyle, supplementation, and various measures that the experts will detail. Now, some of the experts in here range from Dr. Daniel Newsom to Dr. Shruti Lamb to Dr. Brooke Goldner to Dr. Rashid Buttar, and many others, even Dr. Joel Furman. So we have many medical doctors, doctor of osteopathy, natural medical doctors, all sharing expert advice, wisdom, information to help you get to the root cause of autoimmune disease. This is a program that's valued at $497 that we're giving completely free. Now, any program that you purchase, you'll get this amazing gift. Silver, gold, doesn't matter. You'll get this gift added in for free. The videos, the transcripts, everything. And you can enjoy it. If you enjoyed this series, you'll absolutely love that. The root cause of autoimmunity is very, very important. We all have an element of autoimmune reactions happening due to toxicity. And so it's important for us to identify these toxicities and to learn how to remove them from the body. I'll share an amazing story as well. Natalia Voloshin was someone that came in touch with us because of a severe condition that she had, vasculitis, which is a very common vaccine injury. And as to her reasons, you have to assess all these types of things when you see these kinds of chronic conditions. She was told that from a doctor, in 2 weeks we're going to have to amputate both of your legs unless we give you very high dose chemotherapy and steroids. And yes, that's going to shrink you and destroy your kidney function. But once that happens, we'll just put you on dialysis. And then, by the way, after that, kidney transplant list, a lot of people never get the kidney transplants. I know I've been in that situation with a family member, my father-in-law. So I know the suffering that type of situation causes. And here she is, after having spent over the course of 5.5 years, every year she's putting money down, or her life savings. She spent over $200,000. I verified this when I went out to fly to meet her in person because I found it so remarkable, and I want you to know about this because she was able to reverse her condition using the protocols that she learned from us inside of the series in autoimmune disease recovery. And that's what you're getting here. And you'll see her even in that program sharing what she did. So you'll hear from her, hear her journey, hear what it's like to be in that situation. The sad truth about what she was going through was that she went from being someone that was never depressed to someone that wanted to end her own life. And I don't say that lightly, and it's something that I believe that we need to help lift each other up, and it's never a solution to consider exiting this life. But I understand when people are in such suffering that these are considerations that go through their mind. We have to help each other so that these things never happen, that we never lose a precious child, a son or daughter of God in this world as these things happen. So I want you to know that the protocols, exactly what she did, is all inside of this series. Single thing that she did, the types of protocols that she took. This is all kind of stuff that you can do at home for free from the comfort of your home. And there are certain things that you can add in. For example, if you want to try this or that type of supplement to add in, you can find these types of things locally or find them from certain places. But the key is that the power is in your hands. So again, completely free. Remember, this program is going to be taken down once episode 9 ends. So it's only available for this episode 8 and episode 9, and then it's off. It's taken away and you won't get the opportunity to get that. And it's a specific program that we've developed and adapted here for this audience, an amazing 12-module protocol. Next, you'll have the Brain Healing Breakthrough. Now, this is a program designed to get to the root cause of dementia and even anxiety and depression. Of course, also Alzheimer's, which falls under dementia. Now, we have case studies. For example, one of the speakers inside of this series, Dr. Kathleen Toops, is a medical doctor who herself had dementia. While she was running clinical trials on Alzheimer's, she realized that she was this clinically impaired as her patients, and she realized that she had to get better, and it wasn't through the pharmaceutical pathway, it was through natural medicine. So she didn't know about this, and she details this inside of this, as well as Dr. Dale Bredesen, as well as Dr. Daniel Newsom, getting to the root cause of the gut-brain connection, for example. And even the very famous expert, Dr. John Gray, who is the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, so he's known for this, but his expertise in brain health and being someone that had Parkinson's and reversed it, his head was shaking out of control. The fact that he details this and how he reversed Parkinson's, you want to really get this and enjoy this and watch this. It's incredible. It was a missing nutrient, mineral that's very common that people are missing, that he used, and he shares that, and other tools and protocols that people can use and just add into their diet to fix and reverse these conditions. It's amazing. It sounds hard to believe, but these are well-known people and they're detailing these protocols. Dr. Daniel Amen shares his protocols, and he's known as the most popular and famous brain health doctor in America, and he shares the details. What foods trigger inflammation in the brain, and how do you know what they are? You can eat delicious and healthy food and food that you love. Just a couple things that you should know about so you can work out, hey, look, is this worth this? And if I simply just change this for this, which tastes equally as good and delicious, then why wouldn't I do that and enjoy a much better life? So Dr. Amen shares about this in his Bright Minds protocol inside of this amazing tool. So Brain Healing Breakthrough. Again, this one is valued at $497, and this is something that you'll get completely free inside of our program, and it's something that we're going to be taking away once the end of episode 9 is completed. So once that goes live and the 24 hours of the viewing completes, then this program will be gone as well. I don't want you to miss this. Depression, anxiety, very common symptoms that people are experiencing due to stresses, traumas, things that are going on in the world, but also dietary issues, gut imbalance, issues with our gut being able to produce the neurotransmitters that are needed for our happiness, serotonin being produced, 90% of it in the gut. So you need to know about this and how you can be happy. You deserve to be happy. It's a beautiful aspect of life when we're happy, when we're joyous, when we're able to smile and laugh with our friends and family. And it's a genuine laugh. It's not like a laugh that we're putting on, a mask that we're wearing. I know the suffering that so many are going through, and I want people to have these tools because I know how much they change lives. My wife was one of them. She was on depression and anxiety medication, both of those two conditions that she was diagnosed for, and she was suffering immensely. Our marriage was on the rocks. It didn't look like we were going to survive. We didn't have the tools to cope with our situation. And this was being able to resolve my wife's health, my own health, and helped us so much then resolve the different traumas and issues that we're experiencing as a young marriage, and things that we could not get through, but we didn't have the health and the fortitude and the brain power to do it. And we used the tools that we share here and in the autoimmune answer to autoimmune disease course. We're sharing this. These masterclasses are nothing short of spectacular. They will change your life, and that's why they have a high value point. They sell for these types of prices all around in the past and have, but now you're getting them for free without having to pay a penny for them when you own COVID Secrets. And finally, this one's very important. It's called HEAL, Vaccine Injury Recovery and Immune Protocol. Now this is very important. This is a 13-module course, and in here you'll be able to learn from some of our prolific experts, from Dr. Judy Markovitz to Dr. Brian Ardis to Dr. Mark Sherwood and Dr. Michelle Sherwood. They'll be sharing with you what they have done and seen successfully work. Dr. Henry Ely and some of the new protocols that he's developing, and Dr. Russell Mars, the two people that are working directly with Maddie DeGarre's case, and all the learnings and findings that we occur and come across, and all the new things that are being developed as Dr. Christina Parks has invited us into her syndicate, and we learn from their group, and we incorporate all of these things, and they're learning from us and our discoveries, and we're bringing all this information to you inside of this program. And so it's really, really amazing. This is also from childhood vaccine injuries to flu shots to obviously the COVID-19 vaccine. And the key there is harnessing the immune system. So this is also has a strong focus on immunity. So those that simply want to have strong immunity and want to be able to avoid future scenarios by strengthening their immunity, which doesn't mean just taking vitamin C, even though vitamin C is great. In many cases, it's much more to do with removing toxicities from your life so that your immune system can function unimpeded. For example, that's just a little giveaway there about some of the things you'll learn and how powerful and effective they are, which is one of the cheapest things you can do as well, because it's not something you have to take every day. It's something you take to remove something, or it's something you eat to remove something, and then you can enjoy a much better quality of life and health. Liana, the case study that you've seen in one of our bonus episodes, the protocols that she used are detailed inside of this, and Natalia Voloshin, her protocols are detailed inside of this as well, because I believe we have evidence to show that the vasculitis that she had, that many of the vaccine injury patients are having from the COVID-19 vaccine injury, have their root in the toxicity that's in vaccines and various vaccines and this technology and how it causes immune system issues and toxicity in the blood, which causes the veins to be inflamed and not be able to function properly. So very important. This is valued at $597. You get it completely free inside of the gold package. Check it out. I want you to have these tools. They are life-changing, and we've just added $1,591 of free gifts to your order because we want to help you in these times. We know that if you use these tools, they will change your life. Remember, all of these will be taken away at the close of the following episode, episode 9. Make sure to take action here while you can on this page today, because it could be minutes away from when it's expiring. It could be hours. I don't have that while I'm sharing this with you. That depends on when you're watching this. So if you're hearing this, it means you've got in just in time. Now's the time to take action. Use this. This is only for fast action takers. People that come later or next week or in a couple of days won't be able to get access to these at all. And I don't want you to be missing out on this because I know how life-changing it is. Let us help you. Inside of each of these courses, these master classes, you will get access to question and answer sessions with our doctors. So whether it was the autoimmune or the brain healing breakthrough, or whether it was the vaccine injury recovery, you'll be able to participate live on question and answer, so you can ask your own personal questions, things that you're struggling with, that you're challenged with, to our doctors, our amazing doctors inside of this series. I really appreciate you considering this. Thank you so much for coming with me in this journey. Use this program to change your life. Take action right now by clicking on the buttons below, and I can't wait to see you in the program right away. Thank you, Senator Kim Thatcher, for taking the time to sit with me. Jonathan Otto, I do investigative journalism. I'm grateful to have Dr. Henry Elias, a really close friend of mine, and he's really enjoyed being on my platform and sharing, and same with me with him. And we're just, we're doing what we can to get the word out, and you obviously know what Dr. Elias is doing, and I appreciate so much your support with him with that. He sees you as a real, somebody that's in his corner and fighting the good fight from a place of power as well as the camaraderie. So thank you for that work. I would love to hear from you of what you understand the government's response is to this issue, both the negative and the positive. I'll let you go with that where you want.
Well, you know, it started with the 2 weeks to slow down the spread. And I probably was thinking, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And then things quickly began to unravel as far as making sense. As it was coming out more and more that the people who were affected had many comorbidities. I think it was 4 or more comorbidities, and they were older. Those are the people who were dying. But they locked down everybody. They made it so that if you had a restaurant, it was illegal for you to operate your restaurant. It was illegal for you to serve food. You would be fined. I mean, who would have ever thought that it would be illegal for you to serve food in your restaurant? I mean, if it was poisonous, maybe that should be illegal, but just to serve a regular dish to somebody, or to allow somebody to go into your drugstore to buy Tylenol while not wearing a mask, should that pharmacy be shut down? Should that store be shut down in a small town where nobody else? I mean, that's the only place there is in town. This happened in Southern Oregon. This is what it just began to look like. It was more about power and compliance and less about public health. Because you look at the supposed cure. I'll just say the cure was to slow down the spread, wear masks, and then eventually get vaccinated when they became available. And as that was happening, people were losing their lives for other reasons. They weren't getting in to get treatment for cancer or finding out they had cancer. They had mental health issues. So people were losing their lives, and it was like almost more were losing their lives. It was like, is the cure worse than the disease? And on balance, I would say yes.
Yeah.
He had kids just suffering out there, and they're still out there suffering with these mental health issues that have come about because of the government's response. That speech therapy, that's something I'm hearing about. Their kids are not able to speak correctly because they have not been able to see people's mouths move. They can't hear very well. They're talking through this muffled device. So when they're listening to their teachers talk to them, they're not hearing it correctly, and they're not able to see their mouths move. And that's really important for a developing child. I'm not a child expert, but I've had 4 kids, and I know that it's very important. And it's just there's so much fallout from this, and it's all from the government's response. And yeah, I think we all just kind of fell for it at first. I did.
Yeah, tell me about it. So easy to fall for it. I researched these things a lot even before this, and yet when it all happened at the start, it's like, this sounds odd. Okay, it's just a week. Just because I was busy with other things. If I had just sat and thought more critically, I probably would have caught it. But I did. Even for me, there were some things I didn't catch, and I was like, this is not like me not to catch these things, because I often find myself like, well, I mean, back in 6 years ago, we were talking about a mandatory vaccination program that was coming in 2020 in a film that I did called The Truth About Vaccines.
Wow.
That's interesting, because there's actual Healthy People 2020 was the name of the act or something. Wow. Anyway, it's like an actual, anyway, I'll pull up some of the facts. But I think one of the things that, on the positive side, tell me about, because you're a senator and you're willing to talk to me and connect with people like Dr. Ely and Thomas Rands. What are you doing, and what are there other people like you? I mean, I was just at the Senate hearing. I was in the room at Senator Ron Johnson's second opinion. So there's this other side. There's this good side, it appears. Is that true? Is there something happening there that's of value and of effect in the public and in the potential for lawmaking in this area?
I think that, at least in Oregon, I noticed that the senators, the representatives, all take up their own battles. They take up different battles that fit with what their circumstances, who they know, who they're connected with. I just happen to get connected in this. So that is why I'm involved with this. But there are other issues that are being tackled. And that's important. We can't all be doing the same thing and moving, we need to have a unified idea, but we need to do these different things to make it change eventually in a positive way. And so there are definitely good people in the Oregon Senate and in the Oregon House. Just because there's 2 of us that are involved with this doesn't mean that there aren't others that aren't also working on other, I guess, brush fires of freedom.
That's great. That's great to hear. So you have a very optimistic view that you feel is warranted, like you're around people that you feel that have genuinely good intentions and are trying to do the best for their people. Do you see evidence of that? Or do you see people that purely want a position of power and respect of the people and are willing to do anything to get that?
What I see mostly is the people who are opposed to what I might be doing or Senator Linthicum might be doing, or any of us in this room, are so saturated with the narrative. I'll just say it, the narrative, the official line, the government line, the media line, the big tech line, the big pharma line. They're so bathed in that, they cannot see anything else. I think eventually they'll get there.
Yeah.
They're just not there yet.
Sure. Well, that's open-minded. So you've got, it seems like you're kind of on a bit of a ledge to kind of be vocal like you are about the problems. Does that bring any concerns for you? Is there any ramifications or backlash for you choosing this path?
Oh, I'm sure. I just think it's too important to just sit on the sidelines and let it happen and roll out if there was something I could do. So they've redistricted. I will be running in a new Senate district. Only one little city remains common to what I had before, the one where I live. But so I don't know what the ramifications will be there. I don't know if those people are super saturated and bathed in the official narrative and government lines or not. We'll just have to find out. So there will be a lot of opposition because you still have the people running the media, and even though local media is not quite as overt with their exclusion of topics that big media wants to avoid with all, without putting a slant on it that goes towards the official narratives and government lines. There still are reporters and some muffling of that voice, and they really don't want to talk about it. I had a conversation with a reporter semi-recently talking about what was coming up in the session. Well, to me, pushing back against the governor's emergency orders, the mandates, the vaccine mandates, people losing their jobs, that's very important. You want to talk about that. Wow. Is there anything other than COVID you would like to talk about? Quote. Yeah.
Wow. And so with the position that you're in, it's kind of like, it's easy in life when you have your cheerleaders and you just choose something that everyone cheers you in, like versus doing something where you do something and like you hear a lot of negative things, like as if every day you're painting a painting and you're a painter and everyone goes boo, and then you just the next day you paint another one and they go boo. Like, all right.
Why do you keep painting at that point, right?
Yeah. Is there any feeling like that with this kind of challenging position that you're in, to speak the truth as you know it, and yet be in this environment?
It's a little like, maybe not like painting, but walking off a ledge onto you don't know what the surface is below. You don't know if it's going to be a soft surface, going to be way down there or what, or if you're going to trip and fall once you land. You just do, and you move forward. And if you fall, I guess you just get back up and move on. Hopefully learn lessons, right?
The other problem that I see, and I don't know if you saw this, it was a Facebook video that came out probably 8 or 10 days ago is when it came across my phone. And it was a mom. Everybody's a citizen journalist now. That's the beauty of this cell phone technology, is we can all record what's going on right out in public. And she walked into a pharmacy, I think it might have been a Walgreens, and asked the pharmacist, local doctors, if you will, what was in the vaccine. And he went to get the insert. She's like, oh, it's not in each one, but there'll be one in the box. So he's like, yeah. And he goes back behind the counter and he digs out this insert and he brings it over. And these things are like about this big, and then you unfold them and unfold them and unfold them, and it looks like some origami hell, right? And then you get something that's longer than both arms, and he unfolds it and it's completely blank. And he goes, wow, this must be, it must have been a mistake. Let me go get another one. And she goes, no, they're all blank. No, they're all blank. And he goes, oh, and then she starts gently, not like I would have, right, but gently cross-examining, like it's just a parent that's not a lawyer would, like, have you heard of the Nuremberg Code? And he's like, and his eyes got really big, and he goes, yeah. And she's like, and you're a doctor basically, and you believe in informed consent? And he admitted he did. I think he was actually a good guy underneath it all. She goes, how is this informed consent? And he's like, you're right, it's not. And she's like, then how can you be handing out these vaccines? And he's like, I shouldn't be. I was shocked at the number of admissions she got from this guy. He was clearly rattled. He was clearly being forced to face, in a very cognitively dissonant way, the fact that he was the new Nazi brown shirt. He was part of the problem. He was goose-stepping along in line with the plan. But what is the plan? Oh, trust the science? Pfizer is now asking to withhold the data until 76 years from now. I'm sorry, a 5-year-old can tell you, if you're not willing to be fully transparent, you got something to hide. Everybody who's 5 and up knows that. I didn't take the cookie from the cookie jar, mommy. Really? What's that in your hand behind your back? I mean, hello? Like everybody, but everybody knows this. And we've still got hundreds of thousands, millions of Americans going, oh, it's fine. Really? They're not going to show you what's in the vaccine? You don't think that's a little suspicious? And it vitiates true informed consent. And there are state laws and federal laws and international standards like the Nuremberg Code that say you must give informed consent to the patient. How is this legal? It's freaking not. And the question is, what do we as a group, as a society do when these systems that were put in place to create a free society, namely a judicial branch, an executive branch, and a legislative branch, when all three are simultaneously failing us? And I think the answer is what it's always been. It's we the people. This is a country, in my country, I don't know about Australia, but here, your new country, of the people, by the people, for the people. We the people are the government. They work for us. We elect them. We are actually their boss, but we have forgotten that. We need to start holding our elected leaders accountable, and if they continue to run away like a runaway freight train, we need to get out on the street, much like Australia is doing to its credit, much like Europe is doing to its credit, and a little bit like America is doing to its credit, and say, we the people won't stand for this anymore. Holocaust was horrifying. And everybody's like, oh, Hitler was such a bad man. I'm like, no, he wasn't. Don't get me wrong. He's an evil man, and he deserved everything that came his way. Holocaust was not the result of Hitler. It was the result of millions of Germans turning a blind eye to their Jewish neighbors and agreeing to go along with a bad plan. Otherwise, that man would have been one man with one bad plan, and if everybody had just said, no, we're not making our neighbors in ovens, he would have had zero power. The people gave him power. The Holocaust, in my humble opinion, was the result of the people not standing up. And I firmly believe the reason we're in a burgeoning second Holocaust is, yes, partly Operation Paperclip that took Nazi war criminals out and put them in various governments around the world to do more dangerous things, but in the main because we didn't fully learn the lesson the first time. It was nice that FDR and Churchill came to the world's rescue. A better end would have been the people of the world rising up and just saying no. And I think that's the lesson we need to learn now. And I think we are getting there.
Wow, isn't that something? There's a certain aspect of history that you're familiar with that's very helpful, like things like Operation Paperclip. And it helps us understand that the events that are happening are written into the events of how history transpired. We see similar things of what happened with what's happening currently with the vaccine with something like PFOA C8, which is Teflon. It was used to coat tanks and the inner linings of chambers for guns and things like this. And then it was completely released into
kitchen cookware.
Yep.
My Airbnb this morning had a whole little group of Teflon stuff underneath, and we found the one cast iron and we went with that.
There you go. Yeah, because you just won't do it. And these are the types of things, and DuPont is still going.
Oh, yeah.
Still doing their damage.
Yeah.
There were thousands of cases won for the injured people. But these were like emergencies that happened out of war. And so these developments, for example, chemo was created through the discovery through mustard gas.
Yep.
And then, but one of the things that's unusual as well is this program called MK Ultra from the CIA. And one of the discoveries, one of the things that was in a film called Wormwood, which is on Netflix, which was Eric, I'll remember his last name in a moment, people can look him up. The issue of what had happened was that his dad was killed. It was a CIA scientist because he didn't pass the truth serum test. And he'd just seen the movie Martin Luther, and he said, "Here I stand, I can do no other." And so then he became a threat, and he either jumped out of a window, dove out of a window.
Oh, was he the one that dove out of the window?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that.
Exactly, completely murdered, thrown out the window, and that's why the case was won, and it was like somewhere around $850,000. And
familiar with that.
And so, but one of the things that was the discovery in this was that germ warfare was all a part of what MK Ultra was about releasing, and this was the thing that he and others had such a hard time being silent about. It's the same thing of what's happening is that it's really germ warfare. It was about releasing biological weapons intentionally.
It was. So MK Ultra was very mind control focused. It was a lot of LSD, a lot of strange things where they actually took over brothels in San Francisco and fed LSD to guys to see what would happen in the brothel. I mean, horrible things where you go, really, this isn't like somebody's fiction book. This actually happened, and it actually happened. That part actually happened too.
And Aleister Crowley was the think tank behind all of that.
Oh yeah, very dark there. But MK Naomi, which I didn't realize, I was familiar with MK Ultra and some of the other secret CIA stuff. I didn't stumble on MK Naomi until right before my last Clay Clark event, and I spent probably a good 5-6 minutes. So MK Naomi, I think it was created in the 50s by the CIA, and it became part of the Church Committee hearings that Congressman Frank Church did in 1976, where they did a deep dive into all the shady dealings that the CIA had done, including MK Naomi. And MK Naomi was born out of the realization in the time between the 50s and the 70s that the US, or so we thought, was lagging behind the KGB. So the KGB had executed 2 Ukrainian guys in like West Germany using secret poison from a distance. And America and the CIA went like, oh, what the heck, we're behind the 8 ball. We need to catch up to the KGB. So they went to Fort Detrick, Maryland, and started doing some research and trying to find a biological weapon that could kill instantly and leave no trace. And what they came up with was the shellfish toxin, which when you put it on the lips or the fingertips would cause about 10 seconds of tingling. That's what the person would first feel, and then immediately would follow a paralytic death, and it was untraceable. And then they decided they needed a delivery vehicle for the shellfish toxin. And they created what looked like a Colt 45, like a fat Colt 45 short snub with a big old telescope thing on top. And this thing would actually fire completely accurately, 250 feet. And the weapon it fired was a little dart that was the width of a human hair, and 1/4 inch long, dipped in shellfish toxin. And so for all these people who are like, oh, our government has our best interests at heart, and they would never do shady stuff, and they would never off people that they didn't agree with. Newsflash, they've been looking to do this stuff for a while. They've had the technology for a while. The Church Committee hearings that exposed this were in 1975. I was 3.5 years old.
Wow. And you
I'm
can
almost
watch
50.
You can watch all of them on YouTube, and
You
you
can.
see the gun get pulled up.
Yes, and he's
here
holding
is.
it in Congress, and they're talking about it. This is not a conspiracy theory. You can go Google this tonight and find it. And what do we have now? We have Pfizer, I think it was, employees on Project Veritas tapes saying it's time to blow dart the unvaccinated. They want to shoot you with a little blow dart gun like Frank Church was holding up in the committee hearings with their little poison, and they're trying to develop self-spreading vaccines so I can sneeze on you, and even though a needle didn't go into your skin, you can be vaccinated. I mean, this is scary stuff.
Josh Yoda, privileged to be with you today. I had some fascinating conversations with you, and it was about a month ago or less that we were in person last time we filmed, but I felt some of the recent things that have been happening, I just kept saying, Josh, we got to talk to you about that. You need to share this, because this is something that people need to know about. It's something that, it sounds like even just over the past few days, you've had some really shocking kind of things happen, and I want to hear about what's going on for that you're seeing, especially in these military bases. So let's talk about this. And firstly, if you could share some of your background for camera in terms of what's your experience and what line of work are you in?
Sure. I was in the military previously. I was a flight medic in the U.S. Army. After that, spent quite a few years in the defense industry, working all around the world, Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa. Became a pilot. Flew as a bush pilot in Africa for a couple of years, came back to the United States, and I now fly for a U.S. major carrier as a pilot.
Yeah, wow. And that sounds like quite an exciting line of work. Would you agree, or do you find it pretty run-of-the-mill?
Yeah, I love to fly, and it was fantastic prior to the vaccine mandates. That completely turned the industry on its head, destroyed a lot of lives. And that's where the formation of U.S. Freedom Flyers came in, was to help the people whose lives were being turned on their heads by this vaccine mandate. Many of us didn't want to take it. And the FAA approved it. The airlines got behind it and mandated it. Something that's completely experimental, has never been approved. That's been ruled on by a federal judge in Florida, saying that there is no approved vaccine currently in the United States for COVID-19. And the airlines, I believe, have criminal liability at this point because they've mandated something for pilots that's in direct violation of Nuremberg Code. as well as U.S. federal law. And it's having devastating consequences. I mean, we're seeing pilots losing their flight medicals. We've seen quite a few deaths, strokes, blood clots, myocarditis, that type of thing.
Wow. And I guess, yeah, your life was kind of turned on its head, and hence why we're now talking and new friendships are forming, and your life has kind of been sent into a whole new whirlwind and mission. And as we talked about last time, your job and your livelihood, certainly you're not putting yourself in the most optimal position by speaking publicly and basically having being in the crosshair of your own company that you work with, because you're a voice for the people. Did you expect to be in this situation?
No, I never expected to be in this position. It was one of those things when the problem arose, and I was looking around for someone who was fighting it, for an organization to join, and realized that there was nothing, and that it was going to require all of us standing up and standing together to fight it off. And that has been very effective up to this point. Many of us stood together, and a lot of the airlines have backed off on the mandates, or they haven't backed off on the mandates, but they've accepted religious and medical exemptions. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. At U.S. Freedom Flyers, we represent over 26 airlines, and I believe out of the 26, only 4 have actually terminated employees for not being vaccinated, or have put them on permanent unpaid leave. And so, right now we're focusing on suing the Biden administration. We have a federal lawsuit in play right now against the federal contractor clause of the mandate. And once we're done with that, we're then going to turn focus to the individual companies who have mistreated their employees. But ultimately, the most effective thing was all of us standing up and standing together.
True. That's such a good point. Why don't you tell me about what happened with Cody? I'm going to get it from his mouth, but you're his friend.
Yeah.
What happened to Cody?
So Cody went out and got the shot, I believe it was in February of 2021. He believed he was doing the right thing. He hadn't seen the research on just how deadly these shots are. And he went out, him and his wife both together, went and got the shot at a roadside vaccination clinic where you just drive through. He was given absolutely no informed consent. No one ever told him, hey, these vaccines have side effects, serious side effects. No one showed him the insert on the, in the box. He was given no information. He thought he was doing the right thing, and he took it. He waited the required 2 days, per the FAA, before he can go back to flying. On that, after that 2-day period, he got in his airplane. He's an agricultural pilot out of Mississippi, flies a large spray plane, and he took off. And within minutes into the flight, he started developing tunnel vision. And as he went to pull up at the end of the field, most of his flying is below 500 feet. It's very low level, over crops, up and over telephone poles, that type of thing. As he went to turn around at the end of the field, he describes what felt like a bomb going off in his head. And essentially what he found out later was that was both of his inner ears rupturing. And he lost most of his vision, tried to land the aircraft on a 4-lane highway, realized that there were cars there, and he didn't want to endanger other people's lives. So he turned back towards the airport, and he describes, he remembers that he saw the airport in the distance. And that's the last thing that he remembers. He blacked out. And the next time that he remembers anything is when the ground staff back at the airport was pulling him out of the aircraft.
Wow.
And that's been directly contributed now by specialists to the COVID-19 vaccine, specifically Pfizer, and that was only the first shot.
Speaking on a spiritual side of things, how do you think he came down from that? And if he blacked out, how did he land the plane?
I've had long discussions with him about this, and he says, he has no idea, and I think that it was a miracle. He's here to tell his story, to help validate what we've been saying at U.S. Freedom Flyers, that this is dangerous, and the fact that he's speaking out, he's here for such a time as this.
Yeah, because we just don't know, because we don't see the spiritual realm, and we're talking to people that come from all walks of life, but there are a lot of people that see the spiritual realm and the possibility that angels brought down the plane, or an angel grabbed onto the wheel, or God somehow guided the plane, or because if he blacked out, it's kind of unusual that he could land, because if you black out, you could just nosedive, right? Yeah,
there's really no other explanation. There was no one to control the plane. He doesn't remember it. He remembers nothing.
Wow. Now, When it comes to this issue with what you experienced at the military base, what happened there? It sounds like when I looked at you, I kind of saw someone that was almost pale-faced, wide-eyed. I just, saw something that was horrifying. You were connecting directly with people there and doctors and hearing things that were, these were your kinsmen, and now you're in this situation together. And to me, you seemed like quite shocked at what was going on. Can you tell me about what happened?
Yeah, we've had many members of the U.S. military signing up at U.S. Freedom Flyers because they also have a mandate in the military and they weren't quite sure how to fight back. They're in a different position than civilians. They fall under different law. They fall under something called UCMJ. And many of them are terrified. They're absolutely being coerced into getting these shots. Their options are get the shot or be court-martialed. That's not just losing your job. That's being discharged from the military with an other than honorable discharge or a dishonorable discharge, which is devastating to anyone who's been in the military. It makes it very difficult to then secure civilian employment when you get out.
Got it. It's kind of like a criminal record almost?
It is, correct. Yeah, it's a record that stays with you for the rest of your life, and anytime there's a background check at a business, they're going to see that. And it has the potential to absolutely ruin your life and ruin your career.
Next up, we'll hear from two highly esteemed doctors, Dr. Pierre Corey and Dr. Paul Marek. They briefly take the focus off the COVID vaccine and pay attention to how the government has been coercing doctors into suppressing the use of effective COVID treatments like ivermectin, all for Big Pharma's financial gain. They talk about how they will continue fighting this war for good information. Then Senator Kim Thatcher continues as she discusses the grand jury petition that she worked on with Dr. Henry Ely and how she's sad to know how purposeful manipulation has been clearly used to get us to comply with their mandates. We'll also hear from Mickey Willis, who talks about how the truth can really be overwhelming because of the scale of manipulation behind this bigger agenda. He also warns against the danger of ignorance as a response to the pandemic and expresses his concern that people who are still buying into the lies of the government is feeding them are completely hypnotized. He encourages us to choose to respond instead of reacting to the ills of the government. Dr. Corey, could you share your credentials for the camera? People always
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Pierre Corey. I'm a lung and ICU specialist, and I've run intensive care units my whole career, and I've trained physicians in my specialty my whole career. I'm well published. I'm also the president and chief medical officer of the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization made up of doctors who've developed what we think are the most effective treatment protocols for COVID.
I think they're fantastic, and I've been sharing them with our audience around the world, and I can't tell you how appreciative that I am that you have itemized things in a way that have made it possible, and instead of it being quite cryptic and hard to follow, you've made it systematic. And I mean, hence why many people attribute you to saving many, like countless lives, thousands, maybe millions of lives. And I really appreciate the work that you guys have done. And I'm grateful that because you are communicating that information with physicians, that you somehow fly above the radar from getting this like basically shut down. I'm just, every time I look, I'm like, thank God this site is here. Any word and comment on that? Like, how have you guys been able to keep this thing going without being shut down?
So we didn't do it without a lot of support. So we really are proud of our work, and we're proud of the role that we've played in this pandemic and trying to help people. And you know, what sustained us is the team in my organization. When us doctors were relentlessly attacked and we get exhausted by all of this, we have people whose, you know, their hearts burn like, you know, their hearts are on fire. They propel us, they support us. And then, you know, we've also, as a nonprofit, over the last many months, now we're getting so many small dollar donations, which has allowed us to build out our teams and maintain our website. And you know, I think we've just practiced good medicine, and people have appreciated us and supported us. And we're going to keep doing it as long as we get that support.
That's awesome. And there's this famous Joe Rogan podcast that you were on, and it was a very critical moment that you were on this as well, because it was quite a long time before Dr. Malone and Dr. McCullough were on the show. What opened those doors, and what was the response? I believe there were millions of views to that podcast.
So I'm going to credit Brett Weinstein, right, who's an evolutionary biologist and a podcaster, and he's got a large following, and I consider him one of our great public intellectuals. And you know, he, as many of us, is a close student of all things COVID, and he discovered our work, and he wanted to talk to me, and I went on his podcast, and he and I became friends and close colleagues. He understood the critical importance of getting information around ivermectin out to the community, out to the public. And you know, he and Joe Rogan go back a long ways. He's a frequent guest on Joe Rogan, and I think he proposed to Joe Rogan to have me on to talk about ivermectin. And to Joe Rogan's credit, I mean, he had the courage, you know, and he wants the free exchange of ideas, and he wanted to have a discussion, and we did, and I think it made a big difference.
Fantastic. And just on the treatment protocols, is there anything that you could share in regard to, has there been any updates, anything to add into the protocol?
So we just updated our protocols this week. My colleague, Professor Paul Marek, who's right there.
Awesome. Please come in. Please come in. This is a privilege for me. I'm very grateful.
So this is my boyfriend here. We work together.
Well, I'm glad you got a sense of humor.
My partner in crime, but
yeah. So you know, our protocols are based on science, the best available science, and they've evolved since March and April last year. And you know, we believe in science and we believe in the truth. And unfortunately, the truth has been suppressed because there are safe, effective ways to treat this virus. It's a treatable disease. They don't want you to know that. This is a treatable disease. And the lies and misinformation just have to stop. Yeah. They have to stop lying to you. The FDA and the CDC lie. There's no other way to put this. This idea that ivermectin is a dangerous horse deworming medicine is horseshit. I'm sorry to say that. It is nonsense. Millions of people on this planet have been treated with ivermectin. It is one of the safest medications.
4 billion applications, I believe, over the course of 3 decades.
And that was a couple of years ago. By now, I'm sure it's many more.
After penicillin,
2 deaths per year.
After penicillin, this is probably the most important medication ever developed by the medical science. It's had a greater impact on humanity than almost any other drug except penicillin.
Nobel Peace Prize was won for it, correct?
Yes, it's the only antimicrobial drug ever to receive a Nobel Prize. And it is safe. It is safe. It is safer than Tylenol. You're more likely to die from aspirin or Tylenol than taking ivermectin. It's in fact impossible almost to kill someone with ivermectin. It's so safe.
The most important thing is that the reason why they're lying is because they're it would affect the profit-making ability of the pharmaceutical industry. If its true efficacy were known by everyone, the market for all of their new and toxic medications would dry up. The appetite for vaccines and the endless vaccinating would dry up. And so there's a horrific war on that evidence of efficacy that my colleague just put forth. And, you know, we're trying to fight back otherwise. It's a war of information, and we're trying to fight back with good information, not bad information, because that's what they're trafficking. They're trafficking in false, misleading information to hide the efficacy of an extremely inexpensive drug that does not present itself for the obscene profits of the pharmaceutical industry.
Senator Thatcher, I would like to ask you about the grand jury petition that Dr. Ely just submitted today. What do you know about that? How are you feeling about that process? Could you understand it better, certainly better than I do, and perhaps better than maybe, to an extent of what he does, you know how these things kind of play out, maybe. I mean, what do you think about what happened today?
Well, what happened today was a result of an attempt we made earlier. Late last year, August 16th to be exact, we submitted a grand jury petition, or a petition for a grand jury investigation into allegations of, fraudulent data manipulation and just all the things that are developing. There's a whole lot more detail in this one. We've learned some lessons. We have named the individuals who were in charge of the CDC and FDA and other entities, the National Vital Statistics folks, and then later became with the new administration. So we named names this time, and it's laid out in a more legally acceptable fashion, I would say, and has
So
much more detail.
So to not have the names was basically to not hold the right people accountable?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think it was not, if even the grand jury had been impaneled, I think they would have had less direction. Less direction. Well, CDC, that's kind of a big organization. Where do we go with it? So this is very much more specific. So it's targeted at specific people and specific actions that were taken that were leading to data manipulation and willful data manipulation. That's the kind of data that all the states built their programs on, and it went down to the local level. So when we had all these restrictions in place, they seemed pretty uniform at first for quite a while until states started stepping out and saying, hey, we're not doing this anymore. But until then, the states' reactions to the COVID pandemic were very similar, and they were based on all this information coming from the federal government. This manipulated data, purposely manipulated data coming from our federal government.
So this revamp that you, Dr. Ely, had worked on, but it sounds like you had some involvement working on it. Yeah? So you were helping to prepare that document?
More the cover letter that went with it.
Cool.
Very parsing it out and wording things and putting the commas in the right spot and all the things you would do.
Great. And so it's, in a sense, it was, and that had your name on it? Or the cover?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was kind of like you're putting your name to that, right? And your reputation to that in a way, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that was, I would say, a good first effort, but this one's much more robust and much more professional, I should say.
This one that was submitted today also had your name on it too, right? On the cover letter, you were...
Yeah, on the submission where it actually lists us as plaintiffs, it lists Senator Linthicum's, me, and Dr. Ely. So, and then it lists all the defendants by name from, and I can't rattle off all their names appropriately right now, but
exactly.
But yeah, it lists them. So
exactly, flashed on the screen, right? But I think does it make it more credible that someone that's a senator has their name on it?
That is the hope.
I can't see why that wouldn't be the case.
One would think it would help, and so that's why I'm willing to do that, because I think if it has any measurement of increasing the chances of it being taken more seriously, I want to help that.
That's why.
And I absolutely believe every word that I said.
Got it.
That I put my name to.
And it would have also required a lot of trust for you with the people that you were putting that trust in, for example, that was submitting that. So if it was someone that was maybe a little bit loose with their analysis or their facts and kind of a little bit more prone to being a showman or a showwoman, perhaps that might have made you feel a little bit more uneasy
a little
about
less confident.
Or maybe not touch the case altogether based on those things. So curious, is that the case? And with Henry Ely, why was what he was doing, his approach to it, why was that to you of value to actually put your name and reputation on the line?
It's
a huge risk.
This is learning about that there was somebody working on a grand jury petition to investigate this. That to me was an absolute answer to prayer. How can we unravel this? We can't just poke at the state because the state's going to say we're just doing what the federal government told us to do. Well, so that's where the root of it was. We had to get at it, and we have to get at it. And if we don't get at it this time, we'll get at it next time. And that's the fake foundation upon which everything was built upon that really destroyed our country over the past 2 years. So,
sounds like you do see these things in absolute terms. I mean, I get right.
Well, yeah. I am sad to find this out, that there was such a purposeful manipulation And then to find out, they were even trying to find out, doing psychological studies to figure out the best way to sell us on getting these vaccinations, and how to word things so that people would buy it better. It's almost like a marketing study for selling you some Cheetos or something. It's just a little crazy. I don't know. It just seemed like such a constructed, purposeful push to have us comply and for them to have the power. And if we didn't comply, they would exert their power against us. And that's what's been happening. And that has to change, that we have to reveal that. It's getting revealed more and more every day. But it really needs to be looked into, and that's why an impaneling of a grand jury is so important. These are people. These aren't government officials sitting in a jury, generally. I mean, they're pulled from a pool. They might happen to be, but generally they're your neighbors. They're, the farmer, whoever. They're just people. And we have a government that's supposed to be of, by, and for the people, right? The grand jury is the way of holding government officials accountable.
And it's the step that we need to take because of the fact that these processes really should have been screened and caught by our government, but now we start to feel like there's many people in high places in government and the CDC and FDA that are they are the leaders behind this dark agenda, it appears. I mean, I don't know, what do you think?
I don't know if they are the leaders, but they're part of whatever it is, because it wasn't just the United States that was affected by this. This was worldwide. So I think it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
But I don't, I can only guess.
Yeah. It's a huge network.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you think the secret societies have anything to do with that?
Ooh. Oh, very interesting, because I think they have stayed in the shadows. It just sounds so crazy to say out loud, but I think there are people that think they're so elite and much better than anybody else and so rich and powerful that they can do things and manipulate humanity in such a way that they can improve the world in their mind by making us do the right thing and taking away our choice, and they exert our power, or they take away our life through just cavalier treatment, whether it's through experimental vaccines or just various things that have been put out into society that have been later recalled and pulled back and told, oh, what kills people? We need to not have that out there anymore. And then you find out there were studies that revealed before they submitted this for public consumption that they knew that this was going to harm people. And so,
like with Teflon,
what the heck?
PFOA, C8, Pfizer, 2.3 billion in criminal, in one particular criminal offense. You got it. So so in almost every town, like let's say around this country, but a lot of places in the world, there's like something like a Freemason lodge. And I'm not necessarily going to target any particular group, but I am going to say this, that when you have an organization that has levels of secrecy where people take oaths, like even people that are on low levels say they took death oaths, they can't reveal the secrets of that organization. Those types of things, to me, there's this secrecy, like when John F. Kennedy said, where he had a speech about this subject area, said that we are opposed to secret societies who seek, who do things subversively by covert means. These are some of the themes that came up there. Do you think that they're in order to have the kind of engineering to have such cohesive behavior, do you find that some structure or operating through these entities or some kind of entities would have had to have been the case, and that this is also why the tentacles are so wrapped deeply and it makes it hard for us?
I think it's very possible. I think that Klaus Schwab has been quite vocal, but nobody was paying attention to what he was really saying. But now he's been very vocal about the fourth industrial, I don't know, what do you call it? The fourth, and I can't quite understand it with this accent, whatever. The Industrial Revolution doesn't change what you do, it changes you. Wow, I don't think anybody was really paying attention to that when he said that. Just the things that have been said by the really World Economic Forum type folks that go to Davos on a regular basis over the many years, that I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly, but it does make sense that they would have their tentacles into lots of different things. And you just look at how you just go walk into your grocery store, and I bet if you look them up, you could find that most of them were owned by 3 or 4 different big firms out there. You know what it comes down to. Same with our media. And same with, and then media is also pretty much owned by, I should say, or sponsored by Big Pharma. So that's why media doesn't want to say anything that goes against their big sponsors. So there's definitely collusion here. There's definitely a coordination and a structure. I don't know exactly what that looks like or what it goes through, but it seems very obvious to me that there are people way above whatever it is in our country alone, because this happened all over the world.
Thank you for sharing. Now, the grand jury has been submitted today. What was the feeling for you when you knew that Henry got the stamp? And
it's real.
Yeah,
this is real. Yeah.
Cool. Was it nervousness, excitement? What was it?
Excitement.
Yeah,
excitement, but also, just wondering what's going to happen next.
Exactly.
You just don't know. There's a lot of unknowns, but you just have to step out into the dark sometimes and have faith that the road's going to be there, like you were told, and like somebody who went before you told you, or whatever. It's just something that we have to link arms and stand together, because there's many more of us in this world that are waking up, and as we do, we need to link arms and really not try to divide each other and be against each other and allow them at the top manipulating us to hate us because, just hate your skin color, your religion, or your political party, whatever it is. They're trying to stir us up to hate each other. But we have so much more in common, and we need to be focusing on, as we wake up, against who the real enemies of this world are.
True.
It's not each other.
Yeah, you got that right. That's awesome. And on the pitting people against each other, have you got any negative comments and feedback from the public because of your position?
Oh, some. But what I do observe daily, especially now that I'm going into the legislative session over the next few days until it ends, there's a lot of division, a lot of, you can't say that. You need to sit down and be quiet. You're not allowed to talk about this or that, and you just need to sit down and be quiet. And then the other people saying, wait a minute, we need to have freedom, and we shouldn't be dividing, and we need to be able to speak, and that's seen as, add whatever ist, something ist to it, that somebody who wants freedom, that's a code for being, a bad person. Wanting something to follow the Constitution is considered bad or wicked.
Exactly. So those types of things, it's kind of like an odd reality to live in, where up is down and down is up, right? And I think people don't sometimes realize the situation that people such as yourself get put in, where it's opposite lands.
Well, when I started out in the legislature in 2005, the Republicans and Democrats generally agreed on what the problems were. We would just vary on how best to solve them. And then it's developed into, we don't even agree on what the problems are anymore. We used to have a united belief that our Constitution was there to protect all of us. And now we have about half of the the country saying it's racist and we need to tear it up and start over again. And, so that's, there's just been a concerted effort to work to divide us through our education system, through media, through culture, the Hollywood and all that. And we just didn't, I didn't see it. I could see it, but I didn't know really where it was going to go. I never would have dreamed it would go where it is now, where people are getting canceled for speaking their mind. Or Dr. Naomi Wolf read my my statement on a bill I had submitted to support the 5 freedoms that she was working on. To not have the vaccine passport and all that, or not require it, I should say. And she was taken off Twitter, suspended permanently. Who would have thought that after Facebook came on and there was freedom of expression and people could talk with other people across the world, that suddenly it would turn into, well, you're saying the wrong thing. You're off the platform. You're not allowed to talk anymore. Who would have thought that? It's just unreal to me. There's just too much big business in bed with big government so that the big business can carry out the things that big government can't legally do, constitutionally do.
True.
So they meld together and create the society that we shouldn't have.
It's been hard for all of us that, it's almost like, they say ignorance is bliss. Well, I understand what that means. It's temporary bliss, though, is the problem. It's bliss that actually leads to severe trauma, ultimately, because you can't live in ignorance too long. And we've been living in ignorance for a long, long time. And so, but what that statement means is not knowing sometimes you can have fun with the illusion because you think that's what it is. That's reality. Those of us who have had the exclusive peek behind the curtain to see what's really going on, it can be almost maddening at times to come back into the world and sometimes I feel like that I always reflect on that scene from Close Encounters of the Third Kind where he's making the devil's triangle out of mashed potatoes and everything and no one sees it but him, and you want people to trust what you're saying because you want to help them. And why would we be doing any of this if we didn't care about other lives? I wouldn't risk my life and my family's life. My whole world has changed because I realize that the more I do, I'm already on government watch list, no-fly list, and all of this. So I become a major target for simply stating what the world now knows to be true. But because we were so early in revealing the truth, it put me on a list. And so, but why would anyone take that risk? Everything in my life has to be carefully done. Every tax, everything I do, because I know they're just waiting for me to make some kind of error. And it's not, there's nothing worth that except for the human organism. It's not a choice, a career choice. It's a choice you make out of, could I live with myself if I know this and I don't share it? And then this ends up happening, and I look back in 10, 20 years and go, well, I knew it was happening. I could have said something, but millions of lives have been lost now because I didn't say anything. And that's how Judy Mikovits feels, and David Martin, and everyone who's been in my films. So sometimes it's maddening to watch people, especially when I go in the supermarket, and I just see 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds wearing masks, and the whole family's paranoid, and you see them looking at us like we're the, and I just think, God, that divide that between, and I've learned to ask people. I'll try to engage in a civil conversation, and I'll ask them. I'll say, I have one question for you, just very curious. I'm taking a poll here because I'm an investigative filmmaker. Who do you watch for news? And it's you can predict it every single time. This is the media is creating this division because every time they'll say CNN, MSNBC. And those are the two, really the two worst of them. But ABC and CBS, they all get it wrong also. So it gets a little frustrating sometimes to just know like people still how many they were told a shot, they were told 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Now they're told 2 shots, 3 shots, boosters. you know, and none of it's working, and then they see all the hospitalizations from people who are fully vaccinated. At what point? The truth is, though, you know, thousands of people are waking up daily. But the fact that some are still fully buying into that and listening to Anthony Fauci is kind of mind-blowing. But how can you be angry at people that you know have been hypnotized? You know?
That's such a good point. Thank you. That's definitely putting the focus where it belongs. And if someone's hurting themselves, then you don't need to inflict more pain on them by your judgment. You need to just hold them and be with them and suffer with them. And that's what life has always been about anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just like, remember what it was that gave you empathy and love for people in the past. Keep that flame alive and keep going, because it was many years ahead of us and we've got to stand strong. And if we don't learn to love now, we'll never learn it. And that frequency, that place will always unravel us. And I appreciate you teaching the world to operate in that place. It's really, really meaningful, and it's cathartic for me, so I appreciate it.
Well, one thing I want to share is
please.
There have been a couple of moments when I've felt some intense anger. And it was with dear friends who reached out to me that were in disagreement with the movies that I've made. And I did my best to warn them, and now they're reaching out to me to say, my wife has been injured. Can you help us? I know you know a lot of doctors. And those are the moments when I just want to shake my friends, you know, and say, your child's injured, you know, and I get it, it's divine, but I have to remind myself of that sometimes, because these are people I know and I love, and now they're dealing with, you know, potentially years, if not a lifetime, of health issues. And they're young and they're healthy, but they didn't listen. But again, some people have to have a direct experience before it affects them. And so I've been working to transform that experience, because when I have that anger, I think, God, you harmed your child. But then I remember, how do they feel? You know, how do they feel about it? It's got to become with just intense shame and regret. And then I think about, you know, if I can step into true faith, then what occurs for me is, and it changes my perspective of my friends, and that is, perhaps unknowingly, they were assigned to be the ones to make a sacrifice for the rest of the world. And then suddenly my perspective of them shifts to, they're actually a hero. And they don't know it, and they may never know it. But it's the fact that they made that sacrifice. And now the world gets to see that and learn from that. And how many lives will be saved for their one sacrifice. And so in all ways, I believe that we're under some divine plan that's unfolding. And the more we resist it, and I don't mean, you know, it's good to resist the government and not to comply and all that, but the more we resist the natural laws, the more we suffer. And the more we step back to look at what might be possible in this divine unfoldment of our life, this thing we call life, the better chance we'll have to respond to the coming catastrophes that are inevitably coming in the next few years, instead of reacting to them. There's a big difference between reacting and responding. You've never seen an ambulance that says emergency react vehicle. They always say emergency response vehicle. And it's the EMTs that are on the set with that calm, collected persona that allows them to actually be effective in the moment of crisis. And we tend to react. And so it's time for us to respond to the way life is showing up right now, and to know that we chose this moment, and we chose it for a reason. We were literally, I believe, we were born to be here right now. And so what is our role that we are honored and privileged to get to play in this experience that will eventually lead us to victory and a more conscious, intelligent, and patriotic global community.
Thank you, Mickey.
Yeah,
I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you.
Next up, Joshua Yoda continues to talk about how the military has threatened people openly if they don't get vaccinated. They'll get court-martialed. He also expresses how religious and medical exemptions are not being accepted in the military, which is unconscionable. We'll conclude this episode with a powerful testimony from Roland Crystal, an ex-police officer who has actively taken a stand against the mandates that dictate our medical rights. He challenges the Universal Declaration for Human Rights and speaks out about how it's supposed to stand for freedom, and yet all we're seeing beneath the federal government at the state level is tyranny.
So these military members are being placed in an especially horrific situation. The coercion is even stronger than what we're seeing in the civilian sector, like at the airlines. And specifically, the people that I've had contact with are a lot of pilots in the military, just due to the nature of the organization of U.S. Freedom Flyers. And I had a group reach out to me, and they're from the Fort Rucker training base down in Alabama, and which Fort Rucker is a training base for the U.S. Army. So many of these are very young pilots, in their 20s, early 30s, that are there going to helicopter flight school. And a lot of them have gotten the shots. They did it because they believed that they had no choice. And now they're experiencing severe side effects. And there's a group, a growing group, it's quite large. And they're experiencing everything from, chest pain, myocarditis, pericarditis, strokes, blood clots. There have been several cases of pulmonary embolism, and some other very strange disease processes that have popped up, almost immediately after the shots. I spoke to one guy. He got the shot, and within a week after getting, actually it was his booster, he got the third booster, and within a week of that, he developed a rare soft tissue cancer that was very rapidly growing, and he's been given 2 weeks to live. That's just one case. There's cardiac issues that when they go in to be diagnosed at the flight clinic on Fort Rucker, and they'll be diagnosed with something like myocarditis, then they're requesting more testing, and even doctors have put in for cardiac MRIs and follow on treatment, and have been denied by senior Army staff. And it appears that they're afraid of the bad press. The soldiers are telling me the Army doesn't want the bad press of this. They don't want the numbers getting out. They're telling me we're not getting the care that we should be getting. And they're afraid. And many of them are now going to civilian doctors. And they are being properly diagnosed with what the Army is actually actively covering up. And this is very concerning. Several of them showed me their medical records from civilian doctors that absolutely validated their claims. And they said that they can't even get the military to acknowledge that it's coming from the vaccine. And this is unconscionable that our fighting men and women are being treated like this.
How does it make you feel?
It makes me angry. It makes me extremely angry. Our government is destroying the lives of millions.
And these are all people that I suppose felt like in some ways a gun was to their head because they have to provide for their families, and then outside of that, the threat of court-martial is kind of like a fate worse than death to some.
Right. Yeah, it's seen as a dishonor. So they're being put between a rock and a hard place. The coercion is just incredible, what they're doing. It's either, take a product that you don't want or have your life ruined. Those are your two options. And quite frankly, now for the ones that took the product that they didn't want into their bodies, now their lives are also being ruined. It's just, it's devastating what's happening. I mean, I've seen, grown men cry over this issue. And it's just, it's absolutely unconscionable. And it's time that the American people step up and demand that this stop.
Isn't that true? So then what do they do? What would you do if you were in that situation? Would you take the shot?
Well, if you're asking me of my personal opinion, I would personally take the court-martial. I'm not taking the shot under any circumstances, regardless of the cost. But you have to understand, not everyone is armed with the same information that we're armed with. You and I have done a lot of research. We just, due to the nature of work that we do, we know a lot of people. We know a lot of stories, which really makes our positions concrete for ourselves. Yeah. Not everyone knows someone who's been vaccine injured, and so they see it as the lesser of two evils. Even though they didn't want to do it, they did it because they were ultimately forced.
Yeah. So then how would you reflect on your court-martial if you had one, and how would you now understand that and cope with that in life?
Me personally, I would be very vocal and very public about why I was court-martialed. if that were to happen to me. You know, I believe there's many people out there who appreciate someone who takes a stand. You know, even if the result is something that's, you know, seen as a black mark on your record. I think when you're vocal about what happened and you can explain it and you can explain that you did what you did because you're standing up for a personal belief, there are many individuals and companies in this world that appreciate people like that and would stand behind people like that.
So would it be a badge of shame for you to have a court-martial?
That would depend on the situation. In this case, no, it would not. I believe it. I see the people that are being court-martialed, I see that as a badge of honor for them. It means that they stood up for what they believe in.
Is it happening to people? Are people not getting vaccinated and getting court-martialed? Is that actually happening?
I'm not sure that the court-martials have actually started yet. I do know that is the threat, and it's coming. The military will court-martial these people. I'm not sure what the date is when that's going to happen. But yes, they have told them in no uncertain terms that they will be court-martialed if they don't get vaccinated. And right now, religious and medical exemptions are not being approved in the military. And this is unconscionable. You know, everyone, as Americans, we have rights.
Basically, about a bunch of people are about to get court-martialed. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Unless something changes, that's what's going to happen. If you don't get vaccinated in the military, you'll be court-martialed.
And there are people that are currently taking the stand that are saying, we're not getting the shot and come what may. Are there people like this, or are there none?
Absolutely, yeah. As a matter of fact, I spoke to a very senior chief warrant officer in the Army yesterday. He was at Reawaken America tour, and he's taking a hard stand. He said, I'm not doing it no matter what. I believe he has over almost 30 years of service. He could retire tomorrow, and yet he wants to continue to serve his country. And they're putting a gun to his head saying, if you don't take this, we're going to kick you out.
Roland, thank you so much for your presentation today. It was really encouraging to see, and I loved how you and Alex stood together, Alex Coombs, for the people and other officers that feeling conflicted, very conflicted right now. And I know it takes a lot of guts to do what you just did and to make the stand that you have. Just what would be your message to all people around the world that are looking at what's going on in Australia right now and feeling really disturbed and sad for what Australia is experiencing? Those people that are watching through their TV, what would you say to those people?
Well, look, we've had calls for people to protest at the Australian embassies around the world and show solidarity and support for this nation. Clearly, Australia is now a nation in distress. We have our leader of the nation, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, who has openly declared that Australia was one of the nations that forged the Universal Declaration for Human Rights in 1948, after World War II. Now that's an awesome document. The articles in that document speak of freedom, yet what we're seeing beneath the federal government at the state level is tyranny. And so not only do I call upon people around the world to support Australia, and for police officers, once a cop, always a cop. I spent 31 years in the cops, guys. You know why you joined. You joined to become a pillar of society. You joined to become a guardian of the peace. So to officers around the world, stand in your truth and protect your communities. And I also call upon the federal government to step in and to mend what's happening to our nation in distress.
Thank you so much, Roland. I appreciate it. And for you, when you, firstly, can you just tell me what your area in the police force was and how long you served?
So I spent 31 years in total. The last 23 or so were in the highway patrol. So I was basically tasked with reducing road trauma. So speeding drivers, drunk drivers, drug-affected drivers. The last 6 years in the highway patrol was targeting organised crime gangs in and around Sydney and around the state of New South Wales.
Well, thank you for your stand, Roland. And you obviously, from your message, you're not going along with the mainstream narrative and not following the stock standard argument. You obviously don't seem to trust it. What are your big reasons? Is this a health issue for you? Is this a personal freedom issue when it comes to this vaccine, the mandates around it? What are your reasons for making the stand that you did, which obviously has come at a huge cost to you?
It certainly has, but it would come at a greater cost if I did nothing. Just like Alex, I could not sit back and do nothing. The reason I've taken the stand is multifaceted. I mean, for myself, it's about my own choice, it's about bodily sovereignty. Now, if we can't choose what medications we put into our body, which is in line with federal government policy, to have that choice is removed from us, we're on a very slippery slope. And so, as I've often said to people, what is the line that you're going to draw in the sand? Now, it should have been bodily autonomy. Now, we've crossed that line. We've allowed them to cross that line. Through coercion, many people have accepted this experimental jab through coercion, just to put food on the table. What an utter disgrace to place our people, to place our communities into such a position of stress and to participate in an experiment. So that runs against every code, every international agreement. And so my message would be turn off the mainstream media, as I've always said. It feeds you nothing but fear. Start to do your research independently. If you're in Australia, look up the COVID Medical Network. That's Australian doctors. They're valid articles and they're well researched. Start to learn what's really going on. The days of turning on that black box on the wall and trusting it are long since gone.
Thanks so much, Roland. I appreciate your stand, and thank you for being brave in these times when people need people like yourself to hold the line and to be a role model for how we react when people do these types of dictatorial measures. So thank you.
My pleasure, thank you.
We all have a huge role to play in standing up for what is right. The government, big pharma, and medical authorities have all been involved in manipulating the public to accept the ills that they've mandated. And when people have opposed these mandates, they're challenged and even coerced with psychological manipulation. But many people, including the experts we've heard from during this episode, emphasize the importance of standing up collectively for our human rights. And if we don't, the tyranny is bound to get worse. They also gave us insight into what we can do to fight against these mandates and stand up for our rights. We'll go into more detail in our next episode, COVID Freedom, How to Stand Up for Your Rights. We'll hear from experts who share practical information about how you can protect yourself from the oppressive mandates that the government is enforcing, as well as how to stand together as a community to fight for freedom against their evil hidden agenda. Thank you for joining me in this episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed creating it for you. Now, this is one of the last reminders you'll have to join our program at our special 71% off discount, as well as the over $2,500 of free bonus gifts that we've added to the program, the $1,591 that we've just added in, which is the 3 gifts: Brain Healing Breakthrough, The Answer to Autoimmune Disease, and Heal, Vaccine Injury Recovery, and Immune Protocol. These tools are so valuable. Our experts are second to none. They share insights that you really can't find in either many other places at all or at all, due to the fact that we have the culmination of the experts and their fields and what they do, and it's all together. For example, in The Answer to Autoimmune Disease, we have Dr. Daniel Newsom going into the root cause of gut dysbiosis, gut dysfunction, what's causing this issue with leaky gut and autoimmune reactions in the body, and how you can clear your body of parasitic infections and heavy metal toxicity. And we have many other experts like Dr. Shruti Lamb, we have Dr. Peter Kahn, Dr. Kathleen Geringer, teaching you all different important tips and tools from mastering your hormones, whether it's your testosterone or progesterone levels or something else. This is a critical tool, and it's helped so many people, like some of the case studies I've shared with you, like Natalia, and also many other men and women like Gail Gass and Diana Cowett. They're 2 amazing people that had so many different challenges in their life. Gail at the age of 69, being sick since the age of 8 years old and having 4 autoimmune conditions, suffering immensely, and using our protocols that she found directly inside of all the content that we had created inside of what we're offering you as a gift. She was able to turn around her condition, go back to having her best life possible, and she just lit up, seeing the beautiful life that she now has with her husband. And even this late in life, she still feels like this all happened to her for a reason, and that she's going to use that reason to help others. And Diana, the same with her husband, even having suffered Guillain-Barré and many other conditions, and she was able to turn it around. Her husband was psoriatic arthritis and arthritis, sores on the back of his neck, open sores, festering pain, so much suffering, and the fact that we were able to turn it around, they were able to turn it around using these protocols, that is remarkable, and you can discover all of them inside of these free gifts. Brain Healing Breakthrough is nothing short of amazing. Dr. Daniel Amen, Dr. Daniel Newsom will share with you their cutting edge tools to help you overcome in these desperate times. You need tools to help you get over the depression and the anxiety, but it's not through necessarily, in most cases, a self-help book, a counselor. It's through correcting the body and then correcting the thoughts and several different areas that we cover inside of Brain Healing Breakthrough. Discover these truths with number one, brain health expert in this country's most sought after doctor for this subject, Dr. Daniel Amen, Dr. Dale Bredesen with the Bredesen Protocol, Dr. Kathleen Toops, who reversed her own dementia as a medical doctor herself. What a fascinating story. Learn from her inside of this series. Again, a free gift valued at $497 as the answer to autoimmune disease, also valued at $497. And the final one, Heal from Vaccine Injury and Immune Recovery. This is valued at $597. Learn from Dr. Henry Ely, learn from Dr. Brian Ardis, learn from Dr. Christina Parks, learn from Dr. Judy Mikovits. And so many more experts that share with you cutting edge tools and wisdom. Remember, this all expires once episode 9 airs and is completed. Then you will no longer have access to these free gifts valued at $1,591. You'll no longer have access to those. So make sure to do that before that ends. If you're watching this right now, it means that you've got in on time. Make sure you don't wait till that is expired. I don't know whether it's a day, 24 hours, a few hours, or a few minutes. I don't know, because I don't know what time you're watching this right now, but I know that if you can see this, it's you're in time, and that's important to then place your order while you remember. And before we close this down, including the 71% off discount and all of the free gifts. So thank you so much for considering this, and I can't wait to see you inside the program and in the next episode, the very final episode, episode 9.